I'm Gail Nixick with ElderWorks Educational Services. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Aging Better Expo. We really couldn't have done it without all of you participating, giving us your feedback. So we're delighted that you're here for all the resources. So it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and I'm going to introduce Kathryn Casey. Katie is one of the few certified elder law attorneys in Illinois. She has practiced exclusively in elder law since 2004. Her practice focuses on long-term care planning, estate planning, special needs planning, Medicaid planning, and applications in probate and trust administration. She devotes a substantial portion of her time helping families plan for the care of a loved one with a chronic care need. Those of you who might have been in the exhibit hall have maybe spoke to her and her partner, Helen. They were out there and hopefully spoke to you. Katie represents her clients with a continuity of care that extends from the creation of a long-term care plan through the execution of implementation and administration of that plan. Katie is an infrequent speaker at the Illinois Institute for Continuing Legal Education on topics including estate and Medicaid planning with retirement benefits and estate and Medicaid planning for married couples. Also, this is, Katie, would you correct me if I'm wrong, it's an interactive presentation. So if there are questions, especially if it's on the slide that Katie is presenting on, maybe you can ask that question while we're on that slide. If not, it might be coming along the way in the presentation. So please welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Katie.
Thank you very much for having me, Gail, and ElderWorks. Thank you for the introduction. I do want to give you a little bit of background about our law firm and what makes us different from a lot of elder law attorneys. Our firm has been around for decades. We were founded by Dutton, who was really the godmother of elder law and started practicing helping families plan for the cost of long-term care, planning for caring for someone with a chronic illness, and planning for the possibility that financially the family wouldn't be able to afford care forever. She started as a solo practitioner, and we are now very proud that we are a team of 6 female attorneys. And we have a culture of teamwork at our firm and a theory of elder law, which is that it is a team approach founded on cooperation with other professionals. So the legal piece of elder law is really a very small part of the pie in terms of caring for someone with a long-term care need. We fill just one little niche with information, with advice, with legal services and documents, but our clients really need more than just that narrow focus. So we work very closely with other experts in the aging community like ElderWorks. We rely very strongly and highly recommend to our clients the services of care managers and social workers in providing advice and care navigation and advocacy in taking care of clients through the aging continuum. We work closely with CPAs, with financial advisors, senior movers, all sorts of senior experts in all sorts of areas that help our clients navigate all of the issues that come with aging. It really does take a team. The elder law attorney is not going to be able to solve all of the problems, but if we all get together as a team of professionals, we are going to be able to wrap a family with appropriate services, resources, and referrals to help make the work of caring for a family member with a chronic illness easier. It is a lot of work. Every family member I see in my office who is caring for a parent, a grandparent, often it's an ill spouse, a disabled adult child, they are all stretched to the max in terms of working full-time jobs, taking care of children, taking care of their loved ones, and the work of navigating the legal services, the care navigation services is really quite overwhelming. Because of that, and because it's so hard to keep up with it all, managing another person's life is really a full-time job. Managing our own lives is hard enough as it is without having to manage someone else's, that I came up with this 10-point checklist to try to keep my clients on track. Hopefully they come to me already on track, right? They're already organized and everything's in place, which means we're prepared in the event there's a crisis. But even after my client comes to me for their legal services, I want them to follow this checklist so that they stay on track. Because again, just coming to me isn't going to solve all problems. We're just going to get some basic stuff in place and get you headed in the right direction, but it takes some maintenance over time. I do not want my clients in my office every year. Believe me, I have enough work as it is without people having to come sit with me every single year to make sure that they're on track. I want my clients to get the legal services they need and then be able to go off in the world and function relatively independently until a new immediate crisis or need comes up. And this checklist is an annual guide to help you help yourselves figure out, how am I doing? Is everything going okay? Is everything going okay with my loved one? And when do I really need to go back to the lawyer? When do I really need to be back in that office? When do I need to be consulting with care management services or reaching out to other professional advocates? So as Gail said, this is an interactive presentation. I will talk nonstop like a train that has left the station and has nowhere to go unless somebody stops me. So please put up your hands. If you have a question at any time, put up your hand. I will take your question and it will give me a minute to take a breath. So don't be shy. Let's see if I can use this pointer. Oh, there we go. All right. Checklist item number 1. The first thing we're going to need to do is simply schedule our annual legal checkup. So this is something that can often fall off the calendar unless we do it in advance and stick to a routine. My preference is to do it in December. December is when I do my New Year's resolutions and I set all of my goals for the next year. December is also the time that I like to attend to the finances, which have been totally ignored all year. So December for me is the month that I have chosen to do my annual legal checkup, and it's December for me every year. Now, a lot of my clients who I meet with tell me December does not work for them. It's too busy, there's too much going on. They like January. The new year has come, things have settled down since family and the holidays has ended, and January is when they tackle it. Other clients of mine have said to me, you know, I have to tackle the finances every year when I file my tax returns. That's April, and I'm getting all the stuff together for the accountant. So other clients of mine have settled on April as their annual legal checkup. The point, though, is find a month that works for you and stick to the schedule. Make it a habit that is repeated every year. Decide who's going to attend this annual legal checkup. So for me, I'm married. So for me, my annual legal checkup is me and my spouse. My spouse does not always want to participate. He does not need another family meeting all of the time. So sometimes it's just me. If you are a single person, or if you are married and you have a spouse who is not particularly interested in planning, have the meeting with yourself. My philosophy is that as long as you are doing well and you are managing all of your affairs on your own, and you are not in need of a great deal of assistance from other people, your annual legal checkup can be a solo one. You can be the only person who's at this meeting. It's your own family meeting. You're the only attendee. When you get to a point where you are near requiring assistance, or if you get to a point where you are already requiring some assistance from a friend or another family member or loved one, then we can invite that person into our annual legal checkup. So what we really need to decide is who in my life, who are the people in my life who are really important to me? It might not be family member, it might be family of choice. It might be people who are unrelated to us, but who are really important and integral to our lives. Are we going to rely on them for assistance? We might not want to, but if we know they're going to step in when they need to, we might want to start inviting them to this annual legal checkup. Absolutely, once we start requiring care, we definitely want the people who we're relying upon to be in this meeting. And those are usually the people who are going to be assisting us with making sure our bills are paid on time, making sure we've got the care we need, making sure we're prepared. So again, just ask yourself, who's important in my life? It might be your kids, it might be your family, it might be your family of choice, it might be your friends, a colleague, whoever it is. Decide who they are and then get them involved at the appropriate time. Don't wait until after a crisis to involve them. Maybe they are only invited to a portion of your annual legal checkup. Maybe you hold 45 minutes of it on your own and get everything organized, and you're just bringing them in for a little taste of, I've named you as my power of attorney. I just want you to know nothing's changed in my life. Here's where my documents are. This is where I keep the financials. You're not disclosing secretive or pertinent information to them, but you're letting them know how to access things when and if they actually need to step in.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you bring some of these people in on like a Zoom or a FaceTime?
Your annual legal checkup can be in person, it can be by phone, it can be by Zoom, and it can be held in pieces, right? You can have part of it alone, part of it with one person who's integral to your caregiving, part of it with the financial advisor. Not everyone has to be present at the same time if that isn't realistic. What should you bring to the table when you're having this meeting? We're going to talk about all of the documents and information that you need to have handy. Now, this is where people laugh at me, but I like 3-ring binders. I went to school in the 80s. We all had 3-ring binders. It was a very important part of back to school. That's how I organized my information. Some people know how to use an Excel spreadsheet. I am not one of those people. If you are welcome to organize your information in that manner. I like to print everything out, punch through holes in it, and stick it in my binder, put the binder on the shelf, and that's my go-to for all my relevant information documentation for my annual legal checkup. We're going to go through all the documents, don't worry. How often should you have your checkup? At least once a year, minimally. So it's minimally once a year. If you are in the throes of caring for someone and you're responsible for having their annual legal checkup, maybe you're taking care of mom, maybe you're taking care of your spouse, maybe you're taking care of an adult disabled child, and you're actively in the throes of providing them with care, and things are happening. There's a lot going on. Maybe we have a placement change. Maybe finances are changing. You might need to have your legal checkup every 3 months. It might not need to be as long or as big a production as your annual one, but you need to check in. You need to check in with the documents, the information, and your team members more often than just once a year. And how long should it take? If you are well in advance of requiring care and you've got everything in order, it's probably only going to take 30 minutes to an hour to do your annual legal checkup. But let me tell you, getting to that point could take a few years. So I do say to my clients, do not expect your first annual legal checkup to be perfect or to be short. The first time is the hardest. Every year you do it, it gets easier. You get more organized as you go. I also tell clients, you're already overwhelmed with so much. Do not try to get it perfect on the first try. I mean, ideally, that would be great, right? You get your 3-ring binder all set up, it's all there. The first one is seamless and perfect. It just takes longer than that. So this is a work in progress, something that's going to build over time. So the very first thing we're going to want to do at our annual legal checkup is give ourselves or the loved one who we're already caring for kind of a review in terms of health, well-being, and ADLs, activities of daily living. And this is where we really have to bring some reality to the table. So this is where we've got to really confront what is hard for us this year that wasn't hard for us last year. I threw my back out last year. I sneezed. I was doing laundry. I sneezed. The disc slipped and hit a nerve. And it made everything very painful and very difficult for several months. Required physical therapy, all of that good stuff. Now that is something that has brought me to realize that things do get harder as we age. Things do get harder. I was on the stairs when this happened. I was rendered totally immobile, and the first thing I thought was, well, it's going to be pretty hard to live here with all these stairs at some point, right? We've got all these stairs. All you have to do is sneeze to put your back out, and you still got to get up the stairs. Stairs are hard. So look at yourself and ask, what has become harder for me this year than it was last year? And what do I expect to become harder the next year? Where am I in terms of getting in and out of my home? Where am I in terms of handling the grocery shopping, the cooking, the cleaning, the changing the bed sheets, which is actually a real aerobic workout for people. It's not easy to change the bottom sheet. All of the things that we have to do to get through our day, how hard has it gotten? How much harder is it going to get in the next year? What we want to start doing is sort of calibrating what changes are we going to have to make? What modifications are we going to make in the future to make living on a daily basis easier? What are our health goals? For me, throwing the back out, physical therapy. Maintaining a strong back, that's a new health goal. So consider the challenges you've had and set some health goals for how you can make living easier. Do you need physical therapy? Do you need to do strength training? Are there adaptive medical things that will make living easier? What are your health goals? Do you have particular doctors you'd like to see, improvements you'd like to make in certain areas? Make a list of those goals. Make sure the goals are very clear and definitive. Make sure they are measurable and achievable. Do not set lofty goals like, I want to run a marathon next year, or I want to be super healthy next year. No, we need something definitive like, I'm going to manage my blood sugar on an hourly basis going forward, or I am going to make sure I see my doctor once a month. A measurable, achievable goal. Again, what has gotten harder lately? What can't we do anymore? And what are we worried about not being able to do in the imminent future? And write this all down and keep notes. Because if you keep notes on a regular basis, you will see progress. And you also will see signs that additional changes need to be made. And you'll have the opportunity to make those changes before a crisis. All right, checklist item number 3. At this, we've now evaluated our health, our well-being, our ability to engage in our ADLs and our health goals for the future. We're now going to evaluate our home. So this is the really hard part, because this is where it is extremely challenging to look at our home with realistic eyes. I look at my stairs in holy terror. There are too many of them. But there are other aspects of my home that I look at and I can't imagine not living in my home. And it kind of colors the stairs. I can sort of push the stairs into the back of my mind while I'm looking at my lovely garden and all of, my front porch and all of the things that make me happy in my house. We have to look at the house practically. We need to look at the living situation practically with a lot of realism and ask ourselves, what is working about our house? What is not working about our house? And what's going to need to change about our house? We need to identify maintenance issues and things that are going to cost money. Because ultimately, we are going to get to talking about a budget. So we do need to know. Sometimes I look at my roof and I wonder, do I have 20 years left? Do I have 10 years left? How many years? How many years do I have before this roof needs to be replaced? And it's going to have to fit into the budget. Or do we have safety issues? I can tell you my bathtub is super dangerous. I don't know about yours, but there are safety issues everywhere in homes. Are there things we can do to improve the safety of our home, which will allow us to live there longer? Imagine yourself, here's a real reality check. Imagine yourself living in this house in 5 years. How easy, how hard is it going to be? What about it works? What about it doesn't? You have to drive everywhere if you live in this house? Is there any public transportation? Is anything walkable? Are you totally dependent on being able to drive yourself or someone driving you? How many stairs are there? Where is the laundry located? How slippery is the bathtub? What can you modify? What can't you? Imagine 10 years from now. Is it a realistic in terms just of, I have clients come to me with their real estate taxes, and boy, I feel for them. I feel for myself, but I feel for them too. Everyone's real estate taxes are really going up. Is it going to be in the budget? Is the cost, the maintenance of our home going to be in the budget? Is it realistic? Start identifying what you can change in your home and what you cannot change. I cannot get rid of my stairs. I'm telling you, there are between the basement and the top floor. No one's changing the number of stairs in this house. But the owner before me lived in this home with Alzheimer's before she had to move to a nursing home, and the whole place is outfitted with an unbelievable number of banisters and bars and safety catches in the bathrooms and the showers. There are things that you can do, and care managers happen to be wonderful at coming into your home and evaluating the safety of your home and suggesting ways to improve the safety and the functionality. And identify, again, what you can't change about your home, and start thinking about other options. Some of my most successful families have been ones who have changed their placement earlier than they wanted to or really needed to, with the forethought of thinking about their current home in 10 years. And they got out of the family home with 6 bedrooms and the laundry in the basement and the attic full of stuff. They did it way in advance, much earlier than they wanted to, but again, with the vision that there would come a time when it would just become too hard to live there, and because it's too hard to live there, also too hard to get out of. If a house is too hard to live in, it can be really hard to get out of. And those successful families downsized into something more manageable, more economical, more accessible, and more central to their support systems. Whether it be friends, they moved closer to friends, they moved closer to family, or they just moved into a community full of strangers, but similarly situated people in a 55+ community where there were activities and companionship and other people with whom they could socialize and exchange ideas with. So checklist item number 4, we're going to review our caregiving plan. Now, hopefully we're doing this annual legal checkup long before we need care. And we have no caregiving plan. So the caregiving plan that we are reviewing is the prospective caregiving plan. It's the future caregiving plan that we do not need now, but which we have in place in the event we need care. So basically that's the care plan, and most people, I have to be honest with you, do not think about this for themselves, but they are pretty good at thinking about it for other people. So this is a good reason to involve other people in your legal checkup, right? It's easy when I look at my mother, I can do a care plan for her, no problem. It's harder to do one for myself, but we really do. We need to do one for ourselves in addition to whoever we're caring for, and think, what is the future care plan? If we have a broken hip, if we get a bad diagnosis, what's the care plan look like? Are we going to get the care at home? Where are we going to get it from? Are we going to get the care outside of the home? What does that look like? How much would it cost? How's it going to be delivered? And again, we're going to calculate that into our budget. So our prospective budget is going to include some level of caregiving, because we just cannot realistically expect to go through the aging process without receiving any care ever at any time. There is going to be some caregiving, at least at some period of time in all of our lives. Hopefully it is a short period of time and not a long period of time. Checklist item number 5. This is where we're going to start organizing personal documents. So get out your 3 reminders and start gathering the following. We need a birth certificate. Do you have your birth certificate? No, my mother has mine. My mother is way too old to be holding my birth certificate at this point. So we should all see whether we have our birth certificate. I don't know where my birth certificate for my spouse is, and his mother is in memory care at this point. So I'm going to have to track down his birth certificate. We need to have our birth certificates. Birth certificates are vital records. We need to have them handy. We need to be able to prove that we're married or in a civil union. Do we have our marriage certificate or a civil union paperwork? Sometimes we need to travel with this paperwork because we might need to prove a legal status in a state that does not recognize civil unions or marriages between same-sex couples. So make sure you can prove your legal relationship wherever you go. We need death certificates of important people who have passed on. So if we are widowed, we are likely going to need a death certificate of a spouse. If we've had a child who's passed, we probably need to keep a death certificate for that child. We need our naturalization papers. My grandfather went through a decade trying to get U.S. immigration to acknowledge his legal status in America. It is really important that you are able to prove your legal status here. It is critical to public benefits. It's critical to all sorts of health care. Make sure you've got your naturalization papers or your passport, your U.S. citizenship paperwork, your social security card works. Your driver's license or your state ID. This is critical too. We have to be able to prove identity. It's also integral to placement, getting care, and healthcare systems in addition to legal paperwork. And frankly, they get lost all the time. This stuff gets lost. You know, mom misplaces her driver's license because she hasn't been driving in a while and no one can find it. And what do you know? All of a sudden you need to prove who your mother is and you can't prove who your mother is. So make sure you've got photo IDs or at least a state ID. And if it gets stolen or taken by a bad family member, which sometimes happens too, or it gets lost, go get a new one. They are replaceable, but you need to actually physically go get one. And if your loved one is in a hospital or a nursing home, it is doubly hard to get that kind of documentation replaced. The Medicare card, very important to make sure that you can prove that you are enrolled in Medicare and show your coverage. Get a copy of your supplemental health insurance card and policies and put them in the 3-ring binder. I do not care if the premium statement is 5 years old. I just want proof that there is health insurance in place and that a premium is being paid. Imagine if someone had to step into your life on an emergency basis, what is one of the most important things they need to do for you? Keep your health insurance in place. Can you imagine losing your health insurance? No, we do not want to lose our health insurance. Getting it back is going to be a nightmare. So if someone has to step into our shoes on an emergency basis and take care of us, we want to make sure they are not missing a premium. We want to make sure that they are getting our health insurance paid for. So this would also include long-term care insurance policies too, because the #1 policy to lapse in the event of Alzheimer's, dementia, or any kind of cognitive impairment is your long-term care insurance policy. And yes, there are supposed to be riders and clauses that say that if you had a memory problem at the time the policy lapsed, you have a certain window to get it reinstated. It's hard to get it reinstated. It's no easy feat. And the window is not always very long. So who's ever stepping in for you might not have time to get that policy put back in place. And then you lose all of the benefits that you had paid for all of those years because it lapsed. Any questions for me on the personal documentation?
Is it a good idea to have a divorce decree?
Oh, great idea, absolutely. If you have been divorced, a divorce decree is an excellent idea. If you have adopted children, adoption papers would be an excellent idea as well. If you've got any children who are still minors, their birth certificates and documentation should be part of your annual legal checkup as well. Excellent point. Yes.
When someone lives in a facility that provides care, like assisted living or maybe a skilled nursing, where do you recommend these items be kept with that person?
By the person, yeah, not in the facility. Yeah. I don't want, because that's exactly where stuff goes missing, right? All important documentation and paperwork should be kept by a responsible family member, probably the person who's managing personal and financial matters at that time. It is also not a bad idea to have duplicates. So, I like to have a 3-ring binder at home in an easily accessible place where you can grab it easily and go, and where someone who would be in charge of you if an emergency happened could easily grab it and start using it. But if we are temporarily hospitalized or in a facility permanently, then those documents need to be kept in another safe place with a responsible relative or a responsible fiduciary agent under power of attorney for property or health care, somebody who's going to keep those documents safe. Not a bad idea, too, to have a second set in a safe deposit box or in a safe somewhere to make sure they're protected from fire and flood. Excellent question. Yes. Yeah, you.
I'm wondering which of these are or are not okay as a copy and how many do we need originals?
That's a great question. I have not yet been asked for originals of anything other than the driver's license or state ID. So for me, at least, copies of everything else has worked fine. I never even need an original death certificate anymore. I used to order, like 30 copies at the funeral home. You don't even need one at this point. You really don't need originals of anything other than the driver's license.
Because that would be in the driver's license would be in the law.
Yeah, which also, getting back to this question, should not be in the facility. Should be held by a responsible family member. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
they would have that only in that admission in the first, when they first were admitted.
They would have it
They're only
upon
administrative.
admission, yeah, and then it really needs to be turned over to a responsible person, so it does not get lost or misplaced. Yeah.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I just wanted to comment that my husband recently passed away, and I've been doing a lot of paperwork related to that, and they have asked me specifically for the original death certificate. Also, I recently went to get my real ID in Chicago,
Mhm.
and they asked me for the original birth certificate. No
Unbelievable.
copies allowed.
Wow. Yeah, to get your real ID, the real ID issued. Yeah, it's probably a very good idea to have at least one original of everything and copies, and then have copies. That's unfortunate. Yes.
My mom just recently passed away. Electronic PDFs saved the day.
I know. It's been kind of amazing in the legal profession
Everything just
now.
zooms.
Yeah, everyone's been operating legally on copies of death certificates and copies of birth certificates, and that's worked just fine for us. But clearly, the government has got different standards. So, yeah.
I think you can get copies with a seal on it, and that qualifies.
It's actually not hard to. It's called a certified copy. So
Right.
yeah, it's called a certified copy, and it's pretty easy to get a birth certificate and a death certificate issued, a certified copy issued. Yeah. Yes,
Also, a picture with a cell phone picture of it, a JPG.
that works too. Yeah, that can work too. Yeah, so for people who are not like me and don't do 3-ring binders and who like to have everything digital, your 3-ring binder technically could be digital as long as you had the originals of those documents that you needed. Here's the thing with digital though, that I warn people about. I hand out to all of my clients a password inventory form, not for them to use, but to remind them that they need to keep passwords and usernames in a safe, secure way, because to tell you a story, when my father-in-law died, he was ahead of his time and kept everything in digital form. So everything's on his computer, all lovely and organized, but guess what? The computer had a password. Oh yeah, and no one had the password. And so for an entire evening, everyone was sitting around a table guessing at what that password could possibly be. I don't know how it got resolved. The computer was finally accessed, but it was a stressful time for the family. So if you're going to keep things in a digital fashion, first of all, it obviously needs to be backed up because, stuff happens, computers break, even backup drives can break. We need to have a backup and it needs to be accessible. So somebody needs to have usernames and passwords. Did I see another hand? Oh, no, yes.
You mean I can't post it on Facebook?
Oh my goodness. You want to keep it all very private. Needless to say. Did you have a hand raised?
I just wanted to say that the same thing happened to me with my husband passed away. He had a
Yes.
password for his phone and
Okay.
his computer, and I didn't know it. And I was not, up to this day, 3 years later, been able to,
I would not know this, but for the fact that I'm an elder law attorney, but I have sat by loved ones down and I have made them make a list. And they don't have to share the list with me now if they want to keep things private. You know, I don't need to have access to their email or their phone now, but I do need to know that there are passwords written down somewhere and in a safe place. I wouldn't even be able to log into our Netflix account on my own because I don't know the password for that, you know? So, you know, it is important to make sure that we all have a place where they are securely stored and can be accessed in the event they need to be accessed. Yes.
Opposite side of the coin, my husband was an attorney, he left me with 12 pages of
Oh,
passwords.
Oh, that is hilarious.
It was not hilarious.
My goodness. Oh, Lord, it is true. You are not supposed to have the same password for everything, and I am so guilty of that. So
He took it to heart.
you did. All right, checklist item number 6. We're going to organize our financial documents. And again, you know, I don't particularly care that these are current. You know, I suppose you could update them, you know, once a year with your annual legal checkup to get a current statement. What I'm looking for here is you imagine somebody is going to need to step into your life and take over the financials. What are they going to need to know? Having a copy of a statement on each financial is going to tell them what they need to know, i.e. where the asset is located, what financial institution, what the account number is, and generally what the balance was as of the date of that last statement. And it's gonna alert them to the fact that this asset exists, and this is how you get in touch with it. So again, it'd be nice if you updated it every year so you've got a current statement, but not critical. Just the important information, like where is your income going? A copy of a checking statement that shows where your income is being deposited would be lovely. A statement showing all your automatic withdrawals would be really lovely too. It's very convenient if you're stepping into someone else's life to know what is on auto pay and what is not on auto pay, right? I mean, ideally we should have a list. We'll get to that with the budget. But ideally we should have a list. This is what is paid by credit card. This is what is paid with check. This is what is paid with auto deduct. Again, imagine you're stepping into someone else's life. You know nothing. What do you need to know? You need to know where the money is, how it's held, and how the bills are paid. So sources of income, automatic payments. We want copies of bank accounts like checking accounts, savings accounts, money markets, certificate of deposits, annuity contracts. Oh my, they are like books. Does anybody here have an annuity? Yeah, they're like books, aren't they? They're like these huge books. They're like 50 pages long. They're huge and they're complicated. And half the time you meet with me, I'm going to say to you, if you have an annuity, I need to see that book. And most people have no idea where the book went. It got shoved in a filing cabinet somewhere. I mean, who knows where it is? A copy of the annuity book, it's called the contract, in addition to a copy of the annuity statement. So almost all annuities come with an underlying contract plus a current statement showing what money is actually there right now. But that book thing has all the rules in it. And the lawyer is going to need to see the rules at some point if you can continue to own this annuity. Retirement accounts. So retirement accounts are basically 401ks, IRAs, SEPs, 403bs, you know, anything that is deferred tax. So anytime you put money away while you were working, or any money your employer put away while you were working, is generally tax deferred, meaning you haven't paid taxes on it yet, except for Roths. Roths, you usually pay the tax so that you don't have to take the tax later, but it grows tax free. So those are your retirement accounts. You want copies of statements organized for them. We want documentation on our prepaid arrangements. So a lot of us make arrangements and then we lose the documentation. So we want a copy of the cremation contract. We want a copy of the burial contract, the pre-need funeral arrangements, if there is one, in addition to the documentation on any plots that we might have. Investment accounts, these are non-tax accounts like brokerage accounts, mutual funds, stocks. Lots of my clients come to me and they've got lots of stocks with Computer Share or BNY Mellon. They are not with a brokerage house like Fidelity or Morgan Stanley. They are with what's called a transfer agent. BNY Mellon and Computer Share are transfer agents. It's where you own a stock without a brokerage house keeping it for you and holding it accountable through a brokerage statement. So you might have 5 shares of Coca-Cola, and it is with Computer Share and it's not in a brokerage statement. You need to have documentation on that stock because you're not getting quarterly statements from a brokerage house on how that stock is doing. And in order to sell or trade those stocks, you have to go through that transfer agent, and it's usually pretty difficult. So it's super, super important if you own individual stocks to have the documentation in this binder. It's not going to be on a brokerage house statement. Bonds too. So if you own like I-bonds, EE-bond, all those bonds, a lot of people do not own them through Treasury Direct. If you do, awesome. You're going to be able to go online and see them all, and it's lovely, and you can print something out and put it in your 3-ring binder. But if you've got paper bonds in a safe deposit box, they need to be copied and kept track of, because in order to determine their value and all of the expiration, all of that, you've got to go online in order to double check, and you need the number off of each individual bond. So those are hard for me to keep track of. They're hard for anybody to keep track of. Paper bonds and individual stocks through Computer Share or BNY Mellon, and it's super, super important to keep track of them in the 3-ring binder. Life insurance contracts. So the biggest question I get after someone passed away is, I found this life insurance policy from 1945. And I don't know how to claim it because the company doesn't exist anymore. And everyone goes on this wild goose chase trying to figure out if this life insurance policy still exists or not. Now, half of the time these policies were, they don't exist anymore because you're not paying any premiums on it, but sometimes they do exist. They do. Some parent bought them for some child and they paid everything up front and it's out there. But you have to track it through like 30 life insurance companies who have come and gone. And believe me, it's a real headache. So if there is life insurance, it's a bit of work, but what's best is to keep track of who the current life insurance holding company is and to get some kind of statement or paperwork on an annual basis to keep track of it, so that when you need to deal with the life insurance, you're not trying to track it through 30 life insurance policy companies that have come and gone. Any questions for me on financial statements and documentation that we're gathering? Yes.
So you're saying that a lot of banks want you to go use paperless statements. They do a lot of paper transaction. So you're saying, but you should go on the bank website and still get the print out some kind of statement.
Yeah. We've all sort of been forced to go paperless, which is probably a good thing because the mail isn't the best anymore. But I'm like a child of the Depression, even though I'm not that old. I print out a physical bank statement minimally once a year because I just feel better. I just feel better having a paper statement. Now, technically, you're supposed to be able to go into your bank and get bank statements for years and years and years. And technically, it should be free, but it's not. So, if you do want like 5 years worth of bank statements or you want to go back really far, they're going to charge you to go back. And the ones online, they typically only go back a year, sometimes 2, but they don't go back very far. So I really do. I like at least one printed out statement per year. If you're going to do it the analog way with the 3-ring binder, if we're going to do the paper method and not the digital method.
But you're saying if you did the digital method, you really just need.
You could just do the PDF. So I suppose if you're like a fancy tech person, right, you're going to do like, pictures of stuff and whatnot and go totally digital, then you could have a file folder. This is so way too advanced for me. But you could have a file folder with an Excel spreadsheet, right? Pictures of all of your personal stuff, and then a PDF, right? You could save a PDF of each of the important statements. I think you'd probably have to scan in those annuity booklets, which would be a real pain because they're bound, they're not loose leaf. But yeah, technically you could have a PDF of everything, and your 3-ring binder, what's a 3-ring binder to me would be a digital file folder for you.
I'm old school, so.
Yeah, I'm going 3-ring binder all the way. Any other questions? Yes?
You only need 1 year though, is that annual?
Well, for me, this is an annual legal checkup. So this is what you're doing for purposes of keeping yourself on track in terms of how am I doing personally? How am I doing financially? What is my aging plan, right? There are going to be times in our lives, hopefully not, but there may be times in our lives when we do need to produce years and years of bank statements. And one of those times is when we need to do a Medicaid application. So for example, a Medicaid application for long-term care benefits in a nursing home requires 5 years worth of bank statements, right?
Yeah.
That's one reason why we may be required to produce a lot of bank statements. Another reason we might be required to produce bank statements is an IRS audit. Another reason we might be required to produce statements is because we're acting as power of attorney for mom, and our incredibly uncooperative sibling doesn't believe we're doing a good job and asks us for an accounting, which we are obligated under law to provide. And if we have to provide that accounting, we're going to have to get years and years of bank statements to demonstrate how we've been handling the money. So yeah, there are going to be instances where we need to get more than just one statement a year, but for your purposes of personal finance and organization, for managing your life, it's really once a year. This annual checkup is once a year.
If you do it once a year, you just add it to the file every year and then it becomes a.
Yeah, you could.
And then at some point you have to call it or.
Yeah, you could, or you could just replace. Pull out the old one, add the more recent one.
Okay.
Yeah, some stuff won't need to be replaced, right? Like, and this is why the first year is so hard, but imagine with the personal documents, they're not going to change. Yeah, they're not going to change. So once you get that done, you're pretty good. Yeah, and then some of the financial stuff won't change either. Like those annuity books aren't going to change. That contract is forever. The statements are going to change. Yeah. Yes.
I've been hard file paper all my life. And after going through my mom passing away, everything became electronic. And so not going into the office anymore, having retired.
Yeah.
You don't have a printer in front of you.
Yeah.
You got to put it on a thumb drive, run over to the UPS to get it
Yes,
printed.
you do.
It's much more efficient, if you will, to save it to a thumb drive and keep it on your computer. And I still have worries about that because it's all becoming electronic.
I know.
Legally, where am I going though? Do I need to make the paper copy to protect myself and my family, or should I just rely on my electronic version? Which way do I go?
Yeah, it's a really great question. The conservative in me says you should have both. You should have a 3-ring binder of paper, which is easily accessible, in the top drawer of your home office drawer, right? That anyone can pull out and refer to easily. And you should have a digital backup copy as well. That is accessible through a username and password for people to operate with. For legal purposes, you really aren't ever going to need to provide your attorney with originals. Attorneys rarely ever need originals. We need original wills. That's one document we always need an original of. Sometimes we need original legal documents, but for the most part, financial and personal documents, we can operate with copies. So for legal purposes, you're right. The PDF version, the digital version is sufficient because that's what you can send to the CPA. That's what you can send to the lawyer. And it's very easy to convey. Most of my clients are like me, and they are actual children of the Depression, and they are much more comfortable keeping paper copies. I also find those of my clients who are younger, the adult children of my older clients, it's hard to start with digital. Sometimes it's easier to just walk into mom's house and start grabbing paper, right? And so the 3-ring binder can be a good starter version. for your annual legal checkup. You walk into the house, mom is starting to need help, and you start grabbing paper from here and there and assembling it into the binder, and then you can get fancy and do the digital version. Any other questions on financials? Yeah.
The financials you might have in a file drawer already, but when you get all the personal documents too, and the financials, it's a lot of information in one place in hard copy. So you don't want it in the facility. But where I live, I learned this from the guy that was one of the people was moving out with later this month. So there's break-ins and things that happen, sliding patio doors. You don't want to have something happen. So where do you suggest all this stuff to be? Somebody got in, but it's not easily found by the wrong people.
Well, don't be like my husband and keep all of your important information stuck in a dictionary, which he thinks no one will ever open. Keep it, like most of my responsible clients these days are getting home safes. They don't want to do a safe deposit box, although safe deposit box is a good option. Oh, that's my phone. So safe deposit box or a safe at home or some kind of fire safe, lock box at home is a good idea. And you can certainly keep things in multiple locations, to be really safe. What's really important is that somebody in your life needs to know where these things are. It is utterly useless if we do all of this work and put all of this information together to make it easy for someone to come in, step into our lives and care for us if it can't be found, right? If you're caring for somebody and you're responsible for organizing these documents, they don't need to be found by anyone other than whoever succeeds you. So for example, let's say you're acting as power of attorney for mom. You're acting as power of attorney for mom. You've got all of her personal documents, all of her financial statements, and you've got it all, in your house on your computer and whatnot. What if something happens to you? Mom's in a nursing home, you're managing everything, you've got control of all the documents and the information, then something happens to you, and the person named after you in the power of attorney has no idea where you've been keeping anything. So it really is important, and that person should probably be in our annual family meeting, right? If we're caring for mom and we're having mom's annual family meeting, the person who succeeds us should probably be there too, or at least be there enough to know where the important stuff is. What we're trying to do is make these transitions easy so that each person who has to be a caregiver or needs assistance isn't recreating the wheel from scratch. Because there is nothing worse than, imagine your spouse ends up in the emergency room, needs to go to rehab, and you don't know how the water bill gets paid. I actually have no idea how our water bill gets paid, by the way. But imagine that. I don't know how the water bill gets paid. I don't know how to access, this, that, or the other thing. The point is to try to make it easy for the person who's going to have to step in and manage things. So having knowledge of where things are located and how to access them is really critical. Any other questions before I move on? I'm running out of time here, and I'm still on checklist item 6. Oh wow. Yeah, right fast. We got a lot more stuff here. So we got long-term care insurance policies, disability insurance. We want copies of the contract in our 3-ring binder, deeds to real estate, lease agreements. Maybe we're leasing our home. Maybe we're leasing one of our rental properties to someone else. Our vehicle titles. It's easy. You can get a duplicate title if you lose it, but it's a hassle. If you have the title, it's a whole lot easier. Safe deposit boxes, the access information for them. Copies of your income tax returns. You would not believe I have a stack of like 20 years in my closet. I'm afraid to throw them out. You do not technically need to keep that many, but you should at least keep, I think it might be 7 years. 7 is it 7? It's 7. All right. Keep 7 years. You wouldn't believe how often income taxes are required, not for IRS audits, but for other legal issues. So very important to keep them. Any kind of contracts that you're under. Maybe you loaned one of your children money to buy a house. Maybe someone loaned you money. Nursing home contracts, we all have to sign them at some point if we're going in. Beneficiary statements, oh my gosh, this is the most important one. I cannot express enough how important it is to keep a physical or digital copy of the beneficiary statement that your bank is responsible for being the custodian of, right? Technically, you are not responsible for keeping track of your beneficiary statements on your IRAs or your bank accounts. Your bank is. But guess what happens? The bank loses them. The bank gets taken over by another bank. Records get lost. I have had more lost beneficiary statements in my career than I can count. It is really, really important to make a copy of the beneficiary statement and keep it in your records. Digital assets. We've really kind of covered this, right? We really, really want to know what the usernames and passwords are for all of the online things. The Amazon Prime account, Netflix. I mean, we need to access this stuff. Credit cards are often online. I think my water bill might be paid online, actually. The electric bill out there, like so much has gone online. We need to know how to access that. So usernames and passwords for all digital assets kept in a safe place. And that would include, obviously, the password to the thing on which you are going to access the information, like the phone and the computer. Legal documents. All right, let's talk legal documents. So you've done a lot of work already. You've organized a lot of information. And the next step is making sure that the legal documents you have in place are adequate, correct, and up to date. If you don't have any legal documents at all, you want to consult with a good elder law attorney and minimally get powers of attorney for property and healthcare in place, if nothing else. You might need more documents than that, but that's sort of my baseline. Like, powers of attorney for healthcare and property are non-negotiable, non-discretionary legal documents. We have to have them, and we need to have them while we're still competent, because if we're not competent, we are no longer able to sign these documents. So we've got to get them in place in advance. A lot of people have trusts, wills. I love the 5 wishes, and the post. I love the post too, which is basically, it's not new anymore. It's still new to me because I've been practicing for so long, but it's not really new. It's what the old DNR used to be. So what used to be a do not resuscitate order is now what's called a POLS, the physician's order on life-sustaining treatment. And it is essentially a direction to your doctor, and it is prepared and signed in conjunction with your doctor to refuse certain types of end-of-life sustaining treatment. 5 wishes is an advanced directive that goes into what your wishes are at the end of the life. And trusts and wills are testamentary plans which govern who receives your assets after you've passed away. So you're looking to see, do I have all the legal documents I need? You might not know, which might be a sign you need to meet with a lawyer. You might have all the documents listed here, and if you do, you need to look at them. I know it's painful, there are many pages, but you need to look at them and make sure all of the people named in them are still appropriate people. Are the people named in these documents still able to serve their function in the document? Are the people you're leaving assets to still able to receive them and use them responsibly? And if any of that has changed, that's a good reason to call the lawyer and have them updated. If you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness, or you are facing long-term care issues or expensive caregiving, that's a good reason to have the documents updated, because sometimes in these documents, we can protect assets from the cost of long-term care for certain people in the family, like a spouse, like an adult disabled child, like a caregiver child. There are sometimes things you can do to make sure that if you need expensive care, the loved ones who are dependent upon you will still be financially taken care of. So that's another good reason to visit the attorney if you're having this legal checkup and you're reviewing your legal documents. Yes?
You only have 1 more minute, sorry.
Okay. That's okay. I think I can do it. Let's see if I can do it. I talk fast. Have you experienced a substantial change or event in the last year? Have your assets changed? Have you moved recently? Have your loved ones changed or experienced a change? Maybe you've got a child who's developed a disability. Are the people named in your documents still appropriate? Has anyone in your life been diagnosed with a serious illness? And do you expect any of these significant changes in the next year? If the answer is yes to any of those questions, that's a good time to revisit the attorney. And final, almost number 10. Number 9, review your budget. I've got a big blank here. This is such a painful topic for so many people. We all have a budget. We just haven't committed it to paper, like this blank screen, right? We need to commit a budget to paper. We need to realistically put down what our living expenses are and decide whether it is sustainable or whether it is not, and what we can do and change about it. I love to help people with budgets. I am a budgeting guru. Been doing it since I went to college, so if you need help with it, do it. Checklist item number 10, you've done all the work. You've put together this 3-ring binder. You've gone through your legal documents. We want to set goals for next year. So at this point, we should have identified gaps, right? Things that need to be done, things we want to attend to, things we want to improve. We're going to set goals, measurable, achievable goals. I'm going to meet with a neurologist. I'm going to meet with a lawyer. I'm going to start interviewing care managers. I'm going to talk to ElderWorks and start investigating, what does independent living look like? What's the CCRC? What would it mean if I moved out of the house and into a condo? And what professionals can you hire to assist you in meeting these goals? So if you have developed a lot of goals and have a lot of needs that you want to address, who can you hire to help you? CPAs, attorneys, senior movers. ElderWorks has tons of referrals and resources for care managers and all of the people who can help you navigate aging. Get some recruits on your team to help you achieve these goals for the next year and make the next annual legal checkup a lot easier. So with that, I'm sure I'm over time, but I will stick around for any questions. Thank you all so much for being here.